Let me take this opportunity to wish everyone a pleasant good morning and to recognize among us Honorable Dr. Alice King, Minister responsible for youth development and empowerment, youth at risk, gender affairs, senior security, and Dominicans with disabilities. We also have in our presence Minister of State responsible for finance, economic affairs, and planning, P.S. Burton, Sylvani Burton, with responsibility for Ministry of Youth, Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities. We have also Mr. Regis Chapman, the Director for the Caribbean World Food Program, as well as his colleagues, Amy and Francesca. We have staff of the Ministry of Youth present, Mr. Morvan, who is head of the Social Welfare Division, and representatives of the Media GIS team. So a peaceful morning to you, and on behalf of the Ministry of Youth, I want to welcome you to this occasion. We welcome each and every one of you. Of course, I would like to single out our partners, representatives of the WFP, who have traveled. Regis has traveled to be with us today to see this program through, as well as Francesca with her support. Once again, we want to thank you and my warm welcome to all of you. I would also like to say that I am very excited about today's events, which will impact the indigent and the vulnerable among us. We know that they are even more challenged with these economic impacts of COVID-19 and also its development issues with regards to growth and productivity, income, food security, etc., and as well as the psychosocial that comes, the psychological impacts that comes with it as well. So this is precisely the reason why the program was conceived, for it not only addresses the vulnerable among us and the indigent among us who were already targeted through various programs, but it also considers those who would have become vulnerable as a result of the impacts of COVID-19. We have evidence that there is loss of jobs, there's been reduced income, we have issues of food consumption, we see changes in people's consumption habits, and those are concerning issues, and that's why this program is very special. It was conceived among state actors, and of course the UN, we know, is always behind ensuring, behind government actors, ensuring that programs are responsive to the needs on the ground. And what makes today's program even more welcoming is that it coincides with the opening of school. And we know that cash transfers will go a very long way in meeting food, medical, and of course school expenses. While parents, of course, and guardians look for ways and opportunities to get their lives back on track in this new normal era. So we are fortunate that WFP espouses that concern that we have. They are the shepherds, or one of the shepherds, who are mandated to contribute to social protection and food security, and therefore it is no surprise that cash transfers is at the heart of their response in times of crisis. Fortunately, coming from Hurricane Maria, WFP was one of the UN organizations who was on the ground, providing support. There was a joint emergency cash transfer with UNICEF. And so we are piggybacking on that opportunity and the strategic partnership that we built in 2017. So we are indeed grateful and delighted to once again, unfortunately, but fortunately, 3 years later, we have the support of WFP again, to partner and to meet the needs of the most vulnerable among us. So Regis Chapman, we want to say thank you to you and your team.
It's a pleasure to partner with the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica in its efforts to fight the negative impacts of COVID-19 on the lives and livelihoods of its people. COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on the world, the Caribbean, and certainly on Dominica as well. Through decisive action at the early stages of the pandemic, the government has done an outstanding job of preventing the devastating health impacts that we're seeing around the world at this point in time. Similarly, however, the economic downfall that has swept through the world has also wreaked havoc on the lives and livelihoods of the people of Dominica. Unfortunately, as with climatic shocks, the intensity of economic shock we are now seeing strikes small island developing states and its people harder than other countries. In many ways, COVID-19's impacts are tantamount to that of another Category 5 hurricane. Job losses and reduced incomes have been widespread, and people's ability to meet their basic food and other essential needs has been severely compromised. It has also affected people's outlook on the future, on what the future may hold. One could argue that Dominica, like many other SIDS, is in a perennial state of recovery, whereby one event can cause long-lasting damage until the next one arrives, to erode hard-fought gains to get back on one's feet. The government and the people of Dominica are still recovering from many of these events, from the 2008 economic recession, compounded by the impact of Tropical Storm Erica in 2015, and of course Hurricane Maria in 2017. The pandemic adds another layer of complexity in Dominica's story of recovery and resilience, and its vulnerable persons that are feeling it the most. WFP supported the CARICOM Secretariat to conduct 2 rounds of remote food security and livelihoods assessments in April and June of this year. What these surveys showed was that the socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19 are significant. In addition to job losses and reduced incomes, global supply chain interruptions are driving food prices up. And most concerning is that we're seeing significant increases in the levels of food insecurity around the Caribbean. When comparing the 2 rounds of these surveys, we're also seeing that the crisis is deepening. While people can now physically move and go about their day-to-day lives as movement restrictions have largely been lifted, again, food prices continue to rise, as does job loss. At the same time, more and more people are struggling to make ends meet and ensure their next meal is provided for, as their ability to use savings and other coping mechanisms gets further and further stretched. As you would expect, these impacts are more severe on the lower income groups. And this brings me back to the comparison with a hurricane. As with any disaster, economic or climatic, the poorest of the poor tend to suffer the most. As governments around the world look to rebuild economies back stronger, it's critical that we don't forget about those that are more marginalized and risk leaving them even further behind. The government of the Commonwealth of Dominica has launched a number of support programs to mitigate these socioeconomic impacts. And social protection in this context is critical to ensure people don't fall through the cracks, and that effective safety nets are there to catch them if they do. These efforts to date have been and continue to be critical, but like everywhere in the world, more must be done. So WFP Caribbean has been working with governments throughout the region to strengthen the role of social protection in times of shock. Social protection is already designed to provide a safety net for people, and as such can be used to quickly scale up assistance to existing and new beneficiaries in the face of crises. Most important is that social assistance focuses on the most vulnerable populations, and it is critical that these populations be further supported in times such as this. We worked with the government of Dominica, as Dr. Paul mentioned, to do just that in 2017 and 2018 in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, and we've been engaging with the government on this topic since then. Today, I have the pleasure to sign this agreement with the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities to launch the Social Cash Transfers Assistance Program. WFP is being supported by the United Kingdom Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office, as well as support of WFP globally and our partners that contribute to our immediate response account, which has received an allocation for this program. Later this week, we start efforts to identify and register potential beneficiaries, helping to fill gaps in the current levels of assistance being provided. The program will target some of the more vulnerable populations, including topping up assistance to beneficiaries of the Public Assistance Program, as well as extending assistance to vulnerable groups such as fisherfolk, fish vendors, small craft vendors, and producers, and elderly and disabled people. While this provides only temporary relief, our aim is to not only keep vulnerable people afloat, but also allow for people to adapt and strengthen their livelihoods. These cash transfers will help beneficiary families meet their immediate needs, including food, health, education, and other necessities. The United Nations World Food Program supported the people of Dominica following Hurricane Maria. I myself was here just a couple of days after the storm passed, and I personally take great pleasure with each successive visit that I make to the nature island. Seeing the progress that the country has made, both from a socioeconomic perspective, but also an environmental perspective. The people of Dominica are strong and they are resilient, as you've proven with Erica, Maria, and you're proving now with COVID-19. That said, the journey is not over. Dominica and its sister islands across the Caribbean continue to navigate a world with COVID-19. Further, we are at the peak of the hurricane season, at a time when weather forecasts predict an active season. We must stand together more than ever to minimize the impact of these shocks on the lives of ordinary citizens. My team and I are happy to be here once again to lend the World Food Programme's knowledge, expertise, and other resources in service to the government and the people of Dominica in these uncertain times. At the same time, my visit here to the Nature Island is also laying the groundwork for how WFP can continue to support the efforts of Dominica to become the first climate resilient nation in the world. Together with our partners like UK, the World Food Programme can continue to support responsive social protection systems, food security, and a productive agricultural sector, and effective disaster management. You have our support now and in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Regis, for your continued support. As I indicated, this project was conceptualized by the Ministry of Youth with the support of Ministry of Planning, as well as staff of the WFP. And so we are very fortunate that we can build even stronger institutional collaboration on important initiatives such as this. Our next speaker, Dr. Alice King, will deliver some remarks, but will also outline the objectives of the project, as well as its benefits to individuals, households, and communities. I know that Dr. King is very excited about this program, given her background, her professional background as a doctor, which means that she cares for people, given her community background, which has had its fair share of socio-economic challenges, but also because she spearheads the ministry that has a very critical role to play, especially in addressing the needs of the vulnerable among us. So, Dr. King.
Let me recognize in our presence Honorable Gregory Riviere, Minister of State in the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disability, Mr. Regis Chapman, Director for the Caribbean World Food Programme. We are so happy to have you here with us today. Chief Development Planner, Dr. Kira Paul, other members of staff of the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, the media, other invited guests. A pleasant good morning to you all. An African saying is perfect for this lunch on this September morning, and it goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We want to go far. We want to be the fittest who survive. No one must be left behind in this long-distance movement. In fact, leave no one behind is the central transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. It is against this backdrop that my ministry is pleased to launch the Commonwealth of Dominica World Food Programme COVID-19 Social Cash Transfer Program. The Sustainable Development Goals and Dominica's National Resilient Development Strategy are the blueprints to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The twin combination should be formidable, if not resilient. This program will work specifically towards achieving several of the Sustainable Development Goals. These include zero hunger, no poverty, and building strong communities. We are confident that these can be achieved given our strong bonds in the community and our long practice of helping one another in need. No one should be living in poverty among us when we have so much to share. We are a community, and this means a sense of communion and indeed wholesome communication among us. Let us not take this for granted. How we relate to each other can determine how far we go together. As expected, Dominica has responded well to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we are cognizant of the fact that this pandemic has had a major negative impact on the social and economic well-being of Dominican households. The pandemic triggered financial and pre-existing vulnerabilities, including poverty, gender-based violence, and food security issues, among others. But we can repair these faults. My government, led by our very visionary Prime Minister, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, led from the front with the provision of assistance to many Dominicans affected by the impact of this dreaded disease. Assisted by our foreign partners, we were able to support farmers, both big and small. Multiple households in Dominica were given the opportunity and the requisite assistance to grow a backyard garden. Government, through the Dominica Social Security, provided grants to employees and small business persons. This is still ongoing. Today, through my ministry, the government is launching the joint social cash transfer with the assistance of the World Food Programme. It is valued at $2,037,675. This cash flow will undoubtedly provide an increase in the incomes of our households and help families cope with the consequences of the shock brought about by COVID-19. Prior to the onset of COVID-19 in Dominica, my government remained committed to meeting the needs of the vulnerable in our population. Over 40 safety net programs have been implemented by this government to address the needs of the vulnerable and reduce the level of poverty in our country. This social cash transfer is one of the strategies aimed at enabling beneficiary households to increase household consumption and cope with the negative impact of COVID-19. As Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disability, I remain committed to meeting and understanding the specific needs of our most vulnerable populations. These include persons with disabilities, children, our senior citizens, pregnant women, single female-headed households, and persons living with chronic illnesses among us. Recognizing that COVID-19 will only worsen the situation of vulnerable groups remains a major concern, but we continue to work with our many partners to assist in cushioning the effects of the pandemic on these households. During this global pandemic, solidarity and strong cooperation between countries and regional and international partners have been essential to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on our public health systems and economies. Our partnerships with the World Food Programme will help to sustain and strengthen our social protection systems and provide the necessary technical expertise for provision of social assistance beyond the project life. We are also very grateful to the World Food Programme, for they will be providing technical support throughout the execution of this cash transfer. The transfer will build on two main components. The first will be a temporary vertical expansion of the public assistance program, ensuring that all people registered automatically qualify for this assistance. In the second case, there will be a temporary horizontal expansion of the public assistance, extending the assistance to those who were not receiving the benefits but were affected by COVID-19 quarantines, shutdowns, and the curfews. Simply put, beneficiaries of the public assistance will automatically receive a top-up to the existing disbursements. However, the Ministry of Youth Development would execute a nationwide drive to facilitate applications to identify other eligible households who can also benefit. During the implementation, we will provide short-term employment to at least 30 persons in Dominica. The beneficiary categories will include elderlies, persons living with disabilities, fisher folks and vendors, small craft producers and vendors. These groups were carefully selected based on opportunities and gaps identified from other government income support programs. It is important to note that the application form will be completed digitally, and the software provided by the World Food Programme will automatically select households based on various vulnerability factors. It is expected that approximately 3,000 households will benefit. These include recipients of the Public Assistance Program, persons with disabilities, children, foster care households, senior citizens, pregnant women, single female-headed households, among others. Selected households will receive between $55 to $150 monthly for a period of 3 months. The size of the transfer increases according to the number of household members and vulnerabilities. On behalf of the government and people of Dominica, I take this opportunity to express our profound gratitude to the World Food Programme for considering Dominica, and also for the commitment to continue to assist us with the implementation of the information management system for all government safety net programs. Let me also express thanks to the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, who assisted in the process of the formulation of this cash transfer program. I urge all recipients of this program to use your resources wisely. Let us work together to reduce the impact of this pandemic on our society. Once again, thank you for all those who made this program possible. May God bless you, and may God bless Dominica. I thank you.
And now we've come to the biggest highlights of today's launching ceremony, the signing of the agreement between the World Food Programme and the Ministry of Youth.